Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast. This is episode 245. We hope you're doing well. Today's show, we're going to talk a little All You Need Is Love. We'll get to that in a second. I'm one of your two co hosts, Tom Hunyadi. You may know me from my other show, Talk More Talk, a solo Beatles video cast. And this one, Two Legs, the Paul McCartney podcast. I'm joined by my partner in crime, my backwards traveler. He is Andy Nichols. Andy, my friend.
Here we
Another
are.
book.
A Beatle one to dive into. Kind of surprised us, but
Yeah.
yeah, we're here and we're back and we're recovering from Record Store Day. We've got a flurry of going live too for a little bit. This month has been a little bit weird, different for us because of Record
Right.
Store Day and unplanned shows like one hand clapping, which Tom will get to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we got a new fun club you can sign up for, right? The one hand clapping. Go to McCartney.com and you can sign up for the fun club or whatever. Get any info on the one hand clapping, and by the time this is posted on Saturday, maybe we'll get an official announcement and maybe be able to order it on his website, right? And
Yeah, since the Canadians leaked it over 10 days ago, or a week ago, whenever we did a show about it, and that track listing looks pretty legit. So
Right. Yeah. The track listing looks fantastic, and we have, like we said before, we have gotten certain tracks on past archive editions. They sound great. Then I'm sure they're going to sound even better now. And I'm looking forward to them. This is going to be a great
oh,
release. I mean,
this will be
yeah,
a great
it's gonna be
great release.
yeah.
Other not another colored vinyl of McCartney 3, a bona fide archival project, not an archival box, but this is a nice archive dive, and that's going to get a multiple format release, I am sure. And if you looked at Paul's social media pages as of today, we're recording this on Monday, the 22nd of April. You see the hand doing this, so that's kind of
Yes.
in classic McCartney fashion. He teases you with images or like one word things about what's coming. So it's Monday, maybe an announcement tomorrow, maybe on Friday. We'll see.
We shall see. And speaking of announcements, another book is available to go, and that's our good friend Luca Perassi. He just released his Paul McCartney and Wings Band on the Run: The Story of a Classic Album. That is, you can now order that on Amazon,
Yep.
and it's ready to go. It's out. It's officially out. You can order it right now, and you can be sure we're going to have Luca on the show again to talk about this very book. And let me say, Andy, I mean, let's talk about this for a second. I mean,
Sure.
almost every album McCartney has done, there can be a book about. And there's just so much going on with these sessions and where he's recording them, if there's an exotic location or not, or a castle, or if there's multiple different locations. There's a story to tell for almost pretty practically every album he's recorded, wouldn't you say?
100% agree. There actually could be. I mean, we've been fortunate enough to hear some of those stories from Adrian Sinclair and Alan
Right.
Cozen in conversations with them, and just listening to them on panels at the fest. It really could. I mean, we got that book on tug of war. I got that book on tug of war
Yes,
earlier in the
that's right.
wintertime,
Yeah.
which is tremendous. So maybe it's the start of something. Maybe this is the next move in the McCartney book series, right? We've had a lot
Right.
of books over the last decade talking about him as a solo artist, which has been obviously was lacking for 40 years. Now we're getting deeper dives into just the albums, obviously, with the
Right.
people, and Luca, who better to do that than the master to do that. Maybe it's the start of something different where we're doing a dive, and you can, because the locations, and thanks in part to the McCartney legacy,
Yes.
some
Yes.
of these details have emerged now, and we're going to hear, I'm sure, a lot of them now between the next in volume 2, traveling to Nashville. I mean, Adrian told us that the Nashville month was the
Right.
stories that come out of that are incredible. He said you can't wait till you read that. So I think you're right, Tom. I mean, wouldn't a book on just like the sessions for Back to the Egg wouldn't that be great?
Yeah. I mean, that was almost a year-long session right there. I mean, it was a never-ending recording session. There's always something uh, interesting going on during these recording sessions, whether band member changes, or, like I said, location changes. Just creating something out of thin air during a session. There's always something very interesting going on with his album session. So good on you, Luca. We're
Yeah.
looking forward to
And
having you
what's so
back
great
on,
about
and I
this is
can't
that
wait to read it.
we can't wait to. It's affirming what we've known all along. Like we've loved this music our whole life,
Right.
and now here, this part of his life, these records are getting the attention. Whether it's archive box sets, yeah, it's been a couple of years since we got one,
Right.
but they're finally seeing the light of day, and they're getting all this attention that we've always felt they should have been getting all along.
Yeah, and absolutely. And then like the books that have been coming out to with the Lennon box sets too. I
Oh,
mean, those are great. Those are great companion pieces
to the
to
box
the
set,
box set.
yes. And the Mind
Yeah,
Games box book has now been pushed back to
right.
September, though. Right now, right?
Right. Yeah, I wonder what the reason for that is.
That's a
With
shame because it would be nice to
right.
have that book when the box comes in July.
Yeah, no, it would be great to have it, at the same time. Like the other two books were available at the same time. A wealth of information in those books, and I don't doubt that this book is also going to be a wealth of information. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of stuff that we've already read in the McCartney Legacy too, but and I'm sure Luca's going to add some stuff as well. But again, I do believe just about every album he's ever recorded could warrant a book like this.
Absolutely. So yeah, a new
So
book from Luca and one hand clapping on the horizon. Things heating up
right,
in Paul world.
things heating up in Paul World. I did listen to. I gotta tell you, I listened just listen to Crooked Boy, the new
Yeah,
EP from Ringo. I gotta say, it could be his best. It
better than Zoom In, Zoom Out.
could be, yeah, it could be. I tell you, the track "Crooked Boy." Linda Perry wrote some fantastic songs for Ringo here, and it's great because there's other musicians on here. You don't have your Lucathers on here. You don't have the usual suspects. Refreshing to hear new musicians on this album, and they're just great. 3 minute or less rockers on this album, and I really gotta say this damn well could be his best EP. Really enjoyed it. So I'm going to listen to a couple more times. But you can be sure that this is going to be our next episode on Talk More Talk. We're going to review the new EP. So
Crooked Boy. Right.
yeah,
When is that actually going to come out legit? Next month?
I think May. I think
May.
May.
Okay.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I do need to double check on that because I do want. I will get the CD. I don't know. And here's another interesting thing too, is because that Zoom In that was originally a 12-inch record. Okay, the
Mm,
last three EPs have been 10 or have
10
been 10
inch,
inches.
right?
This record store day was a 12-inch. Now I'm wondering if now the when the Cricket Boy gets officially announced, or released for the rest of the world along with the
Commercially,
CD
yeah.
or whatever commercially, I'm wondering if that's going to be a 12-inch or a 10-inch. To
I think he'll probably mimic
as
what he did on Record Store Day, sans the color of the marble vinyl. I'm sure
right,
it'll be 12.
right.
Um,
So we'll see here, but
I did get a
yeah,
chance to hear the tracks. I don't obviously, as you know, from the Record Store Day, I didn't get it, but I did. I have heard the
right.
tracks, and
Hmm,
I agree. I agree. It's definitely, I've been down on Ringo in these EPs, but I
yeah,
said, all right, let me give this one a shot, and I have enjoyed it. I think a new songwriter and new
right.
musicians was a good change up for him.
Very, very good change. Very good.
Because like
Much
they just
needed
have this, they
change.
all
You
had the
know.
same plotting.
Yeah. A lot of sameness in those albums, but this is, clearly it's a different take. It's
And
Linda Perry, like
the
you just said.
songwriting is different.
Yeah, yeah, right, yeah, yeah. So Linda Perry has done wonders for Ringo. She's done a great job writing songs for him in the past, and then now we got
And he's got a country album coming out too, eventually, right?
that's I'm very much looking forward to that. I love Buku's the Blues.
Mm.
I love when he does countryish songs throughout his solo career. And this is what 54 years in the making here. His second country
A little bit.
album.
It was the second
Yeah,
album after Sentimental Journey, yeah. And then 54
yeah,
years later, we get that. But yeah, things are very fertile in Beatles world right now. And
yeah,
nothing short to talk about on any respective show or podcast.
exactly. Anyways, so that's really much it for news. I mean, Paul had been seen over the weekend at the Rolling Stones last rehearsals.
Yeah, driving. You see
So
the
that
video
was
of him driving the
right.
car?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
We love you, Paul. He's
Oh
like,
yeah,
hey. Yeah.
So, I mean, listen, if they're in the same state together, wouldn't that be kind of fun? Fun if Paul got on stage and did the track that he did with them on the latest
On the album,
on the
yeah.
latest album. Yeah.
That and then close it with "I
Or
Want to Be
any.
Your Man." Say, "You're welcome,
Hey, I want
fellas.
to
Here
be
you
your
go.
man. There you go.
Here you go, fellas. You're welcome." Drop the mic. Bam.
Yeah, bam. Yeah, but anyways, yeah, Paulie's always doing something, and that's great. I'm still I still think we're gonna get a new album from him later this year, but
Yeah, I
looking
think at
forward
this
to it.
point now it'll be a second half of the year thing, right? Because
Yes,
it's almost
yes,
May.
yeah,
It'll
yeah.
probably be another fall type deal.
I think so too. Yeah, definitely. Maybe even fourth quarter, maybe even November, December, release. Hopefully sooner. Hopefully sooner.
Well, it's getting to the point
So,
now with the Beatles, and I referenced this article a lot. I actually read it in Womack's Cambridge Companion to the Beatles, which is
mm,
one of the first books I ever read, like serious academic books that I read in 2010. And we think about the Beatles and these releases and McCartney stuff and releases around Christmas time. That's what the product and the brand has kind of become. It's almost like Christmas. And
right.
the essay in Womack's book is called "An Abstraction," like the Beatles, an extraction as Christmas. They're basically like every time it comes out, it's like Christmas. And I believe the article was written by John Kimsey or Kinsey, I can't remember. But it's in the Womack's Cambridge Companion to the Beatles, and it's a great article, essay demonstrating why the Beatles releases now in the 40 at that point 40 years later are celebrated like Christmas, and it really does feel like that, right? Especially
Mhm,
anytime around the holidays. Like
right.
think about Now and Then and the red and the blue and all those feelings we had when that came out. It brings that same kind of joy as time
Right.
marches
Right.
on. So
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, they've always been kind of like a fourth quarter type, get out something for Christmas, whether it be the Christmas messages or
yeah,
a single or an album.
for
So,
Crizzy.
yeah, yeah,
So
for the holidays. So yeah, I mean, bring it on. I don't care. Just give me a new album. That's all. I mean, yeah, yeah, I would love to get London Town and Back to the Egg too, like everybody else, but we can get new music. And it's really gonna be curious too. And I'm wondering how many people out there think that we're gonna get the 50th anniversary of London Town Back to the Egg with the Obi strip like we've been getting before we get an actual box set of London Town and Back to the Egg.
good
You know what I mean?
question.
So we gotta wait what 4 more years.
We would have to wait till
Yeah, we have to wait
2028.
28. Yeah, yeah, in 2029 or 20. No, or 20 was 27. London Town came out in 77,
78.
right? 78.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
thank you.
28.
70. Yeah, 78. Yeah. So we gotta wait 4 more years. Um.
I
So
would
I'm
like to
curious.
believe that the boxes will be out before then.
Right. Well, we would like to believe, but is it high on his list for things to release, or should I say, is it high on Capitol's list for things to release? Because we know it's he's signed with Capitol, and it's up to Capitol whether or not they're going to release those. Paul can
I
want to
just
release
like that
those all day
he
long.
is still in not it's not the way we want it in terms of the box sets, right? The archive boxes, but it's not
Right.
like he's completely ignoring his past solo career. 2022 November, we got the solo,
Right.
we got 80 for the 80 singles. We got that.
Right.
We're getting
Right.
one hand clapping. We're getting
Right.
50th half speed reissues
Mass.
on the anniversary.
Right.
So it's not like he's totally ignoring it. He's not. He's just
Right.
he's issuing it in different ways that that are maybe be a little more low profile, not as massively produced. These are limited edition items for the most part.
Right. Right. Because
Individually
they they
numbered.
they've got to be they got to be done, right? Because we got a few tracks on Pierre McCartney. We got, what did we get? We got Arrow Through Me
Arrow
on
Through
Pierre
Me
McCartney.
was on there.
We got
Don't let it bring you
Don't Let It
down was
Bring You
on there from
Down,
London
right? Was
Town.
on there. Yeah. So, and London Town, so
With a little luck
Wondertown
too.
was on the no, yeah, I'm sorry,
With
no,
a
with a
little
little
luck,
luck
not
was
London
on,
Town.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, exactly. So they have to have them ready, whether or not it's still legal issues or not, whatever.
Whatever.
Um, whatever. So it's going to be curious to see if we get those 50th anniversary Half-Speed Masters before we get an actual box set, because it's been 4 years now, pretty much 4 years now since the last
Yeah. Summer of
since the
2020.
last box, yeah, since the last box set. So we shall see. But today, Andy, like we said, we've got a new book. A little controversial. I'm sure, as we know, how Paul and Linda felt when "The Love You Make" was originally released. They filmed themselves throwing it into a fire. I
Yes.
believe it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the book that this is the kind of this isn't anything new.
Right.
These are just
Right.
transcripts, okay? And
Right. Yes.
these were interviews conducted by Stephen Gaines and Peter Brown between
Right.
1979 and 1981 for their book The Love You Make, which came out, and I want to believe it 1983
83.
is when it
83.
was first published. So when we heard that Peter Brown and Stephen Gaines were putting the book out, oh, what are they putting out? Volume 2? No, it's just the transcripts that they use from the tapes
Right.
of all the people they interviewed for their book. And I must say, I know it's very controversial. I know we talked about it. I think on one of our live shows, Sarah Schmidt actually commented she had listened to Stephen Gaines' appearance on Robert Rodriguez's show, something about the Beatles, which I did too. That was a very interesting interview with Stephen Gaines on Robert's show. Listen, you have to just take it with a grain of salt. These are the interviews. I'm sure what they said is true. And Tom's got some passages highlighted that he's going to talk to you about. We're going to chew the fat on. But I must say, just in terms of a release, okay, let's just go through the Liverpool Mafia, shall we? Okay?
Yeah.
Everybody's gone. Neil's gone.
Well, look,
Derek Taylor's
you
gone.
got
They're gone.
you got Alistair.
Alistair Taylor,
got
gone.
Dick James.
Dick James,
You got
gone.
Alan Williams,
Gone.
George Harrison, Magic Alex.
He actually, I think, is still alive, though.
You still got Patty. You got Patty here. Derek Taylor, gone. You got John Dunbar, right? You got
but those are people later in the story. I'm talking about the key people from day one,
right?
When they were like 20 years old and nobody knew them.
Right.
Peter Brown goes back to that time. Nat Weiss and even Dick James, who they met a little later. Well, they met Dick James in the early '60s, but I mean, Alan Klein and people like that. I mean,
you've
Peter
actually
Brown.
Got you got Maureen Starkey in here as well,
right?
That was
so. The fact that they're releasing this and the fact that Peter Brown is one of the last surviving members of that original group is something that needs to be studied and analyzed in 2024, pro or negative, and it's interesting. I was noticing in one of the interviews that I was reading yesterday. It wasn't the one with Paul. I think it was the interview with Bob Wooler, and Bob Wooler asks, I don't know if you read that chapter, but it was
not yet.
But of course, Bob Wooler was asking about. I'm sorry, Gaines was asking about the trip. Why Lennon punched out Bob Wooler, and Gaines goes to him. Oh no, I think Bob Wooler says, "Are you really kind of just doing this book for money?" Something to the effect like that. Something to that along that effect. And then he says, "Do you think you'll still be friends with the Beatles after this book comes out?" And Peter Brown said,
wow.
"I don't know."
Well, I mean, we've had Jude on talking about that subject, right? About
yes, we did.
Punching him out.
We did
on Paul's 21st birthday.
Yeah. I got it right here. Page 72.
Go ahead.
So yeah, blah blah blah. So let's see. He goes. There was Bob Wooler goes. There was a settlement after there was a settlement, and he goes. Is this what your book is all about? Some people feel they can get extra mileage out of this from a money point of view, but at the same time, they open themselves to litigation. I'm wondering how the Beatles are going to view this finished book. Peter, do you think you'll still be friends with the Beatles? Peter Brown, I don't know. I might be. So that's very honest. That's an honest take.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the section from on Bob Wooler. So,
right.
It's I think it's a worthy I think it's a book that if you're a Beatles scholar, you've got to read it. They're transcripts of interview, real, and they're tapes. These were taped interviews that
Right,
still exist. And if you listen to Stephen Gaines, he wants to get those tapes donated to a higher ed institution so they can be listened and studied at some point. Wouldn't that be great to
right.
hear? There's not too
Yeah,
much to hear these people
absolutely.
on tape. Come on.
Right. Yeah.
But Paul,
So
go ahead. Paul
yeah,
has
but this is the Paul section of the book. It says here that the interview that follows is the last he gave before John was killed in December of 1980. There are candid relations about the sense of loss of trust and friendship with John, his position, and their business disputes and the relationship with his now late wife Linda.
mm,
So there's a
real
lot of
quick.
talk with. Yeah, go ahead.
I just before you dive into your
Yeah,
notes there, I just want to
yeah,
preface this with stressing how important it is to look at interviews and any Beatles related text written before John Lennon was killed, because they're
yeah.
gonna
Good
it's gonna
point.
be a totally
Yeah,
different. The people are gonna be a little more honest, and that's what
yeah.
this interview with Paul is. So any Beatles text, any Beatles related text before 1980 is like gold because the opinions are unvarnished and they're not tainted because of a murder that happened, a few months later. So
Right.
that's
Yeah.
what we have. That's why we got this book because it's pretty close to that. And that's why all the except for the interview with Yoko Ono, which was conducted only a month or
Yeah,
so after his
after.
death,
Right. No, yeah, well, I think 6 months
February,
after. So, yeah, so less, 3 months. Yeah, I mean,
2 months
2. Real,
later,
yeah, 2 months later.
February of
It's really
'81, Yoko sits
uh,
down for an interview.
yeah, it's really amazing that she would even, you know, but then again, she was probably already scheduled to do it. I mean, they were supposed to be interviewed, obviously John was supposed to be interviewed with
And
Peter
he
Brown.
agreed to. Yeah.
And he agreed to do it. I mean, all 4 of them gave Peter Brown their blessings. Like, yes, anybody should do it. You do it. Let's get it over with. Let's get
Under
the
the
real story
proviso that
out
it was
there.
just going to be a story about like the swinging
Right.
60s in London.
And not a lot of personal stuff,
No, no,
which there
no.
are, but and obviously, I lose my spot once again. But yeah, I mean, this is just a fascinating piece of work here because I mean there's a lot of talk with Brian Epstein. There's a lot of talk with about Alan Klein,
Yeah.
obviously, and it's really interesting how nothing really about breaking, really nothing serious about breaking up or getting there's this long sections of questions and answers about Brian and then Alan Klein and then the relationship with John, and then relationship with Linda. There's like no, there's a very small snippets of like Beatlemania or
Not that much.
tour. There's not that
No,
much, right? It's
no.
more personal questions about how he felt about different individuals.
Yoko, how was she
Yeah,
perceived?
right.
Linda.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, first question out of the gate. Do you remember what your initial reaction to Brian Epstein was? Do you remember first meeting him? For me, I would have been like, okay, when, do you remember your initial meeting with John? I mean, for me, that would, kind of would be like, you're doing a story about the Beatles. Why not start at that beginning rather than the
But
beginning
you
with
see,
Brian?
Peter Brown and Brian Epstein, they were close.
Right,
Peter Brown worked in
right.
NEMS. You see, that's the
Yeah, yeah,
Peter Brown is the only person. Like I said, he was Brian. Brian knew him,
right,
right? So
right.
it's not so much Beatles. It's like, okay, I'm an associate of Epstein. I know the Epstein family. What? So that's the connection. So he asks about Brian
Yeah.
first,
Right.
obviously.
Yeah, and Paul's I just thought he was suave, sophisticated. You didn't get many people like that in Liverpool. He was classy. And then back to Steven, were the guys put off by him at all? No, we liked that. We thought that was good for a manager. He looked like he'd make a great manager. We were impressed by his car. And they said that before, with Ringo. They were impressed that he had a car. you know. So they were very easily impressed back.
Yeah, because they didn't have
Um,
nothing. They didn't have
right, they
nothing.
get nothing, right? Which was a Zodiac, which you could smell the richness just being in it. It was a big deal for us lads. But yeah, it's exactly. Um, and then Stephen, were you aware that Brian was gay in the beginning? I think so. We used to hang out in nightclubs occasionally with him, and we realized it wasn't sort of our crowd. So
No.
I'm sure they went into clubs that they weren't expecting what was going on. I remember not quite understanding the whole thing, even if we knew it wasn't something we ever talked about much, or we might have a little snicker about it as kids that age might do. Then he goes on here in Liverpool. People were wondering about John going on that Spanish holiday with Brian. See, this is the kind of stuff you wouldn't get if after John's died. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But this is more candid Paul, like right before John's passing, where he could probably talk, say things like this, and then John
Although
kind of
he's
had a little,
still, as we know on our show, he's good.
yeah,
He was in the '80s. Paul, even after his passing,
yeah,
Paul was still pretty
that's
honest.
true. That's true. Very true. And kind of had a little covering of his tracks to do on that one because it was suspected quite widely that what was John doing. The other thing that was suspected from us was that John doing manipulating this future manager of ours, sucking up to him, going on holiday, becoming his special friend. So that when all get managed by him, John would know a little better than what we would do. But yeah, so I don't know if that's just like Paul talking, a little jealousy or not, but yeah, this is nothing new. Obviously, it's
No.
all been talked about before. You're portrayed you're portrayed as being the most demanding of Paul. This is Stephen
And
again.
that's a fact.
Uh, yeah, I always was. I was inquisitive and ambitious. I realize now how ambitious I was. It's funny in the '80s how in '90s how he realized then how I realize now that how
Mm-hmm.
I love when he does that. Um, I did one or two things to tease Brian, like I was saying before. I mimicked my mom. One or two things that at that time. So yeah, what did you do to Brian? Well, with Brian, I remember talking about Alan Klein being in a lift in Hilly House and saying we just heard that the Rolling Stones were getting sixpence royalties per record. So obviously more than what the Beatles were getting per record. Um, so right there, he's getting information from Klein, being able to get more money for the Stones than what Brian was for the Beatles. So interesting there. Do you resent the fact? I mean, looking back on it, or when you realized that he had written the 25% for him into the EMI contract, being Brian, kind of serendipity, or yeah, without letting you guys know. Well, I never knew the truth of that. I always used to say one of the words that I've used ever since that Brian it was that he was green, and he says that numerous times that Brian
Mm.
was green, and he never used to like that being called green because he never managed the band. I mean, we've had people on and they talked about this whole thing with Brian. I mean, there was no playbook for these
There was
kind
no
of things. You know what I
playbook.
mean? Right.
You
There was
know,
no
or
blueprint
or or
for
millions of dollars,
managing
the
a
millions of dollars they lost in the cell tab
right,
deal with the merchandising and all
right,
the dolls and all that stuff. There was
right,
no
right,
playbook for that. Brian Epstein, and it's not Stein. I can't stand when people say
right,
Brian Epstein because it's not how it's the man's name is said. In Liverpool, it
right,
said Brian Epstein, just like the store
right,
was. Brian was a guy of a middle class guy who had some connections. The Beatles were, for the most part, dirt poor, except for John, who was a little bit better off, but not much, and gave them an opportunity to shine.
right. Right. Stephen, but after he died, it turned out that even though he was dead and Neems, Brian's management firm, didn't exist,
Nims.
yeah, Nems, thank you. That somebody was going to be getting 25% of you, which is kind of interesting. Um, going back to that 25%, I mean, that's a, nice chunk of change. Obviously, when the client comes in too and wanting the 20%, Paul then, saying, well, back off,
We're a
we're a
big
big act.
act. He'll take
We're a big act.
15.
You're
He's
right.
got to sign
So
tonight.
he's so
That's a
worried. So
classic
obviously
story.
then right. So I mean obviously Paul's learning a little bit of this as things are happening. Brian's dead. They're learning. Some of the behind the scenes things. So he's being more cautious than the other ones were, in my opinion.
He was. But that's Paul.
Yeah.
That's Paul. That speaks to Paul's upbringing. Jim Mack was
Right.
a very
Right.
conservative kind of guy, and he told Paul to stay away from that Lennon.
Right. Yeah.
That
That's true.
Lennon.
That Lennon. Steven, do you think he killed himself or it was accidental? PMAC, I wouldn't know. He went out to the country, came back, didn't want companionship, came back to the town to try and got pissed. And we understood it was barbiturates and booze. Well, I mean, that was the stories. I don't know. He goes on, Brian set up a 10-year contract, which we never realized. We signed just millions and millions and millions of documents. I remember Neil coming around with all these, and I asked, "Is this all right to sign?" And Neil said, "Yeah." So I signed them all. Which then, again, you read about all these horror contract stories, right? That these artists sign. You're signing all your music rights away. You're signing your likeness away, and here you are trusting, a supposed friend,
You know,
and you're getting screwed out of millions of dollars. Which
but you know
now
what
now
though?
people have lawyers with them to
Right.
go over.
And the lawyers have lawyers.
Yes,
But you know what though? They
yeah,
were they were all so very, if we're gonna use that word, green.
no,
They were
green.
all
Yeah, I mean,
green.
the important thing was to get a contract. That was the important thing,
Yeah, I mean
and they got it. Yeah,
Brian went all over England trying to get them a record deal. So when you're a
right.
starving person, artist, and this has happened with so many bands and artists, you take what you can get initially, and then you can rework the contract, hopefully to work in your favor as you get bigger. Sometimes you get stuck with a
And they
crappy
did.
one, like Billy Joel, who
Right.
who had to
Yeah.
be he had a horrible contract for his first like 10 albums.
Stephen Klein showed up on the scene. He got in touch with PMAC Derek Taylor. He got in touch with Derek. I remember Derek put him in touch with John and Yoko, and then the rest is history there. He went around to see John and Yoko, talked to him to all evening, and John sent out a letter the next morning to all the top business people, to whoever may concern. My affairs are now in the hands of Alan Klein. Stephen, didn't John discuss it with you first? He said, I'm going with Klein. What do you want to do about it? And I kind of said, I don't think I will. That's my role. And George and Ringo said, yeah, we'll go with John, which was their role. But that was pretty much how it always ended up. The three of them wanted to do stuff, and I was always the fly in the ointment.
And
um,
which
yeah,
he always says, watch
right,
all your Beatle documentaries. It was always a if one person vetoed it, they didn't do for it. They didn't go for it, and this time they did.
right, right. And he goes on and talks about how, you know, favoring John, and then favoring kind of Yoko, and maybe promising Yoko stuff as in albums and
Three
whatnot.
freaking
So
double albums. Yeah,
yeah.
but okay, sure.
Too funny, too funny. John's. Let's see here. Oh yeah, and then again the same story we heard during the anthology. John said, "Oh, you're effing effing hell. You're there. You go stalling again." I said, "I'm not
Stalling.
stalling. Yeah, I want to check it out. It's a big movement going with a new manager. You never know. Maybe we don't want to go with this guy. What's the hurry? Why can't we wait?" And then he just goes on telling the same story about the anthology. Klein needed to go to his board on Saturday or whatever,
Friday
which he
night.
never did. Yeah, he
Right.
never did because it's a weekend. So
Right.
so
No, he's
he
got to
felt
have it tonight. He's got to have it
yeah,
tonight.
he's gotta have it tonight. Yeah, yeah. So Paul does feel vindicated with this stuff. When it came out that the other
Rightly
three then
so.
realized, yeah.
And
Um,
he lived for John lived long enough for him to admit that Paul was right.
Yeah, Paul was right. Yeah. They go on to talking a little bit about John and Yoko, and then Steven goes, "Were the other Beatles anti-Linda?" And PMAC goes, yeah, I should think so.
Hmm.
Like we were anti-Yoko. But John and Yoko, you can see it now. The way they got their friendship is to do everything the way they require it. To do anything else is how not to get their friendships. This is still how it is with John and Yoko. So interesting stuff. You know, Again, being very honest, being very open, not being shy about his feelings
Yeah. Or
towards
you hate
John.
a little bit further down the page.
Yeah, go
Peter
ahead.
Brown, you weren't writing together anymore either. Paul, we were
Right,
hardly writing
right, right.
together. If
Right
we wrote
right,
together, it was two words here or just shuffling a few passages together.
right. Stephen, I read somewhere that John was angry because the Eastmans had advised you to buy more of Northern Songs limited stock, and you had done without telling him. Yeah, and this is we've heard about this as well. PMAC goes, no, it had nothing to do with the Eastmans. The whole Northern Song thing was always that John and I had always said to each other, if you're ever going to buy shares and stuff, you ought to always invest in something that you're really totally trust in, so you're not buying a pig in a poke. We always said the best shares to buy would be Northern Songs because we believe in ourselves. So I mean, and that's great. And the Beatles, like we said, they're a big act. So that was always our thing. And John and I then never bought individually. But of course, we were always in Liberty. And then one day I thought I need to spend a bit of money or something, invest in something. Why don't I buy some of our Northern Song shares? It didn't occur to me to ring up John and say, "Hey, buddy, I would advise you to buy up some of our song shares. How about it?" Because I didn't think it was any of his affair, anyways. So there he goes. Just like when he signs the back with Capital and they give him more royalty rate,
Yep.
it's all legal. He doesn't have to tell them, the other three or the other two plus Yoko, that he's getting more
Well,
royalties. He
certainly
doesn't have
not
to tell
then.
them.
Maybe in the '60s
Right.
he could have, but
Maybe he could have said, "Hey, John, look, I'm buying a little extra more stock shares. Why don't you do the same?" Maybe he could have done that. I can
yeah.
see that.
In the
I can
'80s,
see that now.
yeah.
Yeah.
No way.
um. Yeah. But yeah, again, this whole bit
John,
about
so
this.
John was like, "You bastard! You've been buying behind my
Right.
back." John saw
Right.
everything
Yeah.
like a Harold Robbins movie. You know which it
Yeah.
was. He's not incorrect. I couldn't get over the fact that we were really all involved in this. I think to this day he'll not understand. I don't think he would
Right.
accept right now my naivete in it. I think he still suspects me of trying to take over Apple. He still suspects that I offered the Eastmans as managers instead of Klein, and he naturally
Right.
assumed that I would be taken care of better than the others, and that the Eastmans could never be moral enough in their equal judgment to do the Beatles thing and rather than Paul's thing. And I still think they suspect that to this day. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Right.
See, Klein wasn't the right move, and the Eastmans were not the right move either, in my opinion. You can't have your in-laws be the. Think about how John, George, and Ringo felt. That's your in-laws. You want them to be the manager of the Beatles? That's not right
Right.
either, though. Come on,
Yeah. No, I get
should have
it. But
been
both of them had their
independent.
specialties. All right. Alan Klein was great at getting back royalties
Yes,
to musicians, and that was his in. I mean, he had done that for the Stones. He's done that for other acts, getting them back royalties, and then showing them, hey, look what I did. Look what I did for you. I just got you an extra $1,000,000.
and I
Right.
am
So
sure had the
yeah.
Eastmans handled the Beatles affair, they would have done. They would have been perfect. They would have been fair across the board. It would have been totally fine.
Right.
I just
Yeah.
think it was probably a bad look to have your in-laws managing the Beatles. I think, and it's just I just think that's what they. It's just a
Right.
bad look. They would have done a fine job. John Eastman managed Paul's affairs,
Right.
until he passed away a couple of years ago. So
Right. Right.
it was just a tough. It's a tough situation.
Yeah. Yeah, here's Paul talking still about John. I still don't want to screw him. I still do feel for the guy. I really like the guy, even though what I've gone through. I still see that he thinks he's the one who was hurt. I spoke to the Eastmans. I said, if we all think he's not going to have a tax consequence, let's give it to him, because if all sides are that smart, let's all offer it, and break the deadlock, because at that time they're still going through their challenges with settling Apple as well. Even though the contracts are signed, there's still more going on. So yeah, you know,
Yeah,
and then he goes on saying, every time we talked on the phone, as long as Apple didn't come up, the
it was
conversations were
fine,
peaceful. Yeah, yeah,
and that
yeah,
is how it remained until everything really got done
yeah.
in
Right.
'89.
Steven goes, they eventually blocked the release of McCartney, your first solo album.
Oh,
Again, nothing we're nothing new here. It came out that the album Let It Be was to be released, and I had been promised a release date. Things around about that time were so petty that they had a meeting and said, no, 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 we'll hold Paul's and put out Let It Be. Then Paul can have June 28th, 26th or something. I was all geared to go. It was a little do it yourself operation. McCartney one.
hmm.
We done it all at home. And he goes on talking about Ringo coming over and him yelling at Ringo to
Slamming the
get
door in the
out.
poor guy's face.
Slam.
Yep, yep,
Yeah,
yep,
yeah,
yep, yep.
yeah. So, but again, these are the kinds of things that I you want the Beatles, Beatles story. These are not really the kind of questions that you're expecting, to be asked of Paul. I guess I don't know. How do you feel about these questions so far? That
For an interview,
that yeah.
around the time you gotta jump back into the time period now. Unfortunately,
Good
the
point.
book is
Yeah, good
great. There's
point.
transcripts, but
Yeah.
there's nothing in here saying what date they were recorded or where they were
Right.
recorded. I mean, that detail is not really in here. So we're gonna
Nothing
assume it's
about nothing
no
about
nothing
Beatles
music.
music.
No,
No,
yeah, no.
nothing
How do I?
music. Which
Yeah,
it should
because
be about. It's yeah.
what you want it to
Um.
be more about the music, but Peter Brown
Yeah.
again, he was the insider that worked with Brian, so he knew all the details about the business side of things and where things left, and I guess that's where he could speak to
Right.
his questions. I should say were more geared towards
Yeah.
that, because the breakup,
Right.
if we put our 1979 80 hats on, is 10 years past. It's still a pretty fresh wound when you think about it.
Right. Right.
So,
Right.
so the questions are still pretty valid, I think.
Right.
I'm okay with the
Um.
questions, with the interview questions. I was not expecting Peter Brown, of all people, to ask him about She Loves You. He was there. He saw all these songs written, from scratch
Yeah,
to
but you still want their memories of that, though, don't you? Don't you think?
yeah,
Or
and
or their
that lends itself to
perspective.
believe what the real what the see. That's where Paul should have been like. Aren't you asking me questions about the '60s and all this other
Right.
stuff? And you're really asking me details about all the legal stuff. So what's your book
Mhm.
really going to be about? All these
Right.
details.
Yeah. 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 They're talking now about the dissolution of the partnership.
Yeah,
Paul is going. The only thing I've actually done on the pure commercial basis is I now publish "P.S. I Love You" and "Love Me Do." These first two songs were owned by EMI Music Publishing and up for sale. Paul bought them without telling the others, which is fine. It's quite allowed. He goes, and that's the nearest I'd come. If I had been trying to screw people, now the way things are, I could really get in there. but the way I see it, I never did. I know that that's just Klein and John really didn't. Yoko, I'm not sure that she's still. And then he doesn't go on.
yeah,
Then Peter Brown goes. The thing is, when John appointed Klein to be his manager, he knew exactly what he was doing. He knew Klein's reputation. Mick told him he really did screw me. Which, if Mick Jagger, who you've known for many years now, tells you, kind of not to go with Klein, I mean, that should be, good advice right there. But again, Klein's got his nose up his ass, so he's impressed by all the knowledge he knows about John, and he's pampering the Yoko. So of course,
yeah.
um, and we said let's get Mick around here, at Lady Hamilton's
I like
place.
that.
Give Mick
That
a
Lady
ring.
Hamilton's house,
Yeah,
which really just meant it
yeah.
meant Savile Row.
Well, give Mick a ring. Hey Mick, do you mind coming around? He came around. We sat at the big, huge table in the huge room, Lady Hamilton's house. You've been with him. What's the word? What's the score with Klein? And he just gave us, well, he's all right if you're into that kind of thing, which he said multiple times. Well, what is that kind of thing? Getting screwed over by your manager.
Yeah, what?
Getting what about the American tourists? Did they shell shock you? I think no. For me, it was almost all expected. We knew we were good. Well, this is interesting. We had one or two worrying moments, which now just seem absolutely ludicrous. One time we were worried that Jerry and the pacemakers were going to be the ones to do it, as in make it in America,
Yeah,
which
okay.
they did. I mean, they were hot for a hot minute.
For a hot
Um,
minute.
yeah, yeah. In fact, John and I bought a lot of Mersey beats when they figured, well, we're allowed to because we wanted badly to win that poll, whatever that meant. We felt it was like that would make the difference. So yeah, I mean, they were worried about Jerry and the pacemakers, which is, look, I
All,
get it.
all of the, all of these bands were in Brian's stable.
Right? Yeah,
All of
true,
them.
true. I love this little segment here, Stephen. Rock and roll bands had a reputation for being bad on the road, like trying tying groupies to bedposts and effing them with a fish. but you guys were supposed to be celibates. Paul goes, "You're kidding." No, not in the least. Not in the least bit celibate. We just didn't do with fish. That's all. I mean, time to the bed. We didn't feel the need to. There were many, many, many wild oats sown from the word go to the word finish. That's great. How come I never met a girl in America who said I had a great time with the Beatles? Well, I'm glad you didn't. Kidding. Uh, um, let's see what's on here about talking with now we're talking about relationships, getting in with the Dot. Now, except for Jane was serious. No, I had a girlfriend while I was in Hamburg named Dot, Dorothy Rome.
That's wrong. Well, that's
Who was,
spelled wrong.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
Roan. Dot Roan.
okay, okay. Thank you. Who was the first steady girlfriend or serious and almost getting married? I do think that she told Paul that she was pregnant at one time and
Yeah.
didn't. Yeah, it wasn't so. Um, really, what, you were that serious? Yeah, it was actually sort of a big time in my life because I remember feeling very mature because I was going to leave all these rock and roll boys, all these young boys in leather jackets, and I was about to become a husband. I didn't get a great sort of dignity from this. I used to sit around like I was older than everybody because I acted serious, but it didn't happen. But she was my sort of first girlfriend. Uh, and when did you meet Jane? And Jane, getting into the Jane story, which you guys, if you get the
Yeah.
book, you can read all of that. Meeting and then their engagement on Christmas Day.
Then he
Um,
goes into
and
Francie
then
Schwartz.
yeah, Francie Swartz and she goes, here, well, moving along. I think we had to call it off. I think Jane was maybe sort of Stephen. She wrote a memoir, Francine Swartz. Yeah, she did. Yeah, she Peter Brown. She made a career out of those 3 weeks.
No.
Yeah, that was sort of
Wrote a
funny.
book called
Funny
Body
one.
Count.
Yeah, yeah. Trouble with me, like, is I'm not. Going into more. Let's see here. Okay, yeah. One of my favorite parts is I've said before, one of my favorite interview segments from Paul McCartney is the backyard Cavendish, where he's being talked about the LSD, and it's like, no,
Oh.
you have the responsibility. In one article, you admitted taking hallucinogens, and you said the reason you said it publicly was because you wanted to be honest, which he said in that interview. You were asked the question, the LSD thing. Paul says, "Oh yeah, absolutely." At the time, the whole sort of thing about acid, as anyone from then will remember, was that it was sort of the honest thing. You couldn't fail to be pretty honest. It was like the only thing you could handle with honesty. So yeah, and then he just goes on about the whole LSD, and then being honest about it, and then pretty much then he goes, "Can you think of anything else, Paul? I think you've been terrific." So the interview is winding down, and then he's just going in about how he was misquoted in Newsweek about John. Is it true that what Paul said about you've done everything except be yourself comment in Newsweek,
Yeah.
and then he's just talking about how he was misquoted and everything and like that. So yeah, fascinating interview. Again, Paul being very candid,
I
not being
wish
shy.
very. Is that you
You
get the
know,
soft cover there or the hard cover?
no, I just took the
Oh, okay. Yeah.
the jacket off. So. Um, but
Just wish there
again,
were
I mean,
dates. I wish there were dates when these interviews were
right,
conducted.
right. Well, this was the December of 1980.
Yeah, but like but we don't know exactly when. We think it's then.
Yeah. No, wait a minute. This interview follows the last he gave before. Okay, so yeah, so it's not necessarily December of 80, but it was the interviews that follow it. Is yeah. Okay. So
Um,
you're right, exactly. We don't know the exact dates of when these interviews
but it's
occurred,
very
but
telling to know that of all the interviews in this
right,
book, the Paul interview is the most significant one. It's like 40 something pages.
right,
Some
yeah,
entries from other people in here are a page or two or three,
yeah, 10, yeah,
but Paul's
there's
is the
yeah,
meatiest, and it's
yeah,
the first one in the book. I haven't read
right,
the Yoko one. So I don't know how long
yeah,
that one.
no,
That one
yeah.
looks
I'm
like
really
it's.
looking forward to reading the George one and the questions he gets with
Well, the
George
Georgia one's
Harrison.
probably a page.
Yeah, no, let's see here, George Harrison. That's
Forget
actually that's like 14 pages.
that's not bad. I forget who I'm up to.
Uh,
I am up to Jeffrey Ellis, who is also another
okay.
Liverpool guy. That's who I'm up to. So,
Okay. Yeah.
maybe a quarter of the way through. An
But
easy read
again,
though.
yeah, easy read, controversial, yes. Take it with a grain of salt. If you read The Love You Make, this is a great good companion piece to that. So, I should revisit that book. I've never read the whole thing.
You have a copy or
Um
no?
yeah, yeah, I have a copy. I do have a copy. As we know, Paul and Linda didn't like the way um they were portrayed, or Paul was portrayed in the book. And that they felt betrayed for the most part from Paul. I
Do you
mean,
know which version of the
obviously,
book you have offhand? A reprinting or an
no,
original?
no,
The
no,
original, I
no,
must say,
no.
the book is
Yeah.
whatever, but the cover of the original pressing was a really nice photo from the Mad Day Out.
Yes,
You know the cover I'm
yes,
talking
yes,
about?
yes. Yeah, yeah. I have that version that
Oh,
has
you
that
do.
wonderful cover. Yeah, yeah.
Great.
It's a
That's a
hard.
great,
It's a hardcover. Yeah.
great. That's a first edition. Buddy of mine actually got that signed at a fest by Peter Brown
Oh, really?
back in the
Nice,
80s. Yeah.
nice. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So
One sec.
if you have the book, yeah, go ahead.
I want to
Yeah,
get
go
my
ahead.
copy of the other book.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead. So, again, if you have the book, let us know. Are you going to get it? Check it out. Let us know what you think about um, the Paul segment, and others. So what you have, so that's not the copy I have. I can
No,
just
this
tell
is
you
a
right there,
repress.
right
This is
now.
a repressing,
Yeah,
probably circa like 2004, maybe. Peter Brown and Stephen Gaines, The Love You Make.
yeah. I did read it got a repressing in the early 2000s,
That's
or
probably when I
reprinting. I
got
should
this.
reprinting. I got to make sure we say the right thing. Reprinting.
2002. So it's what I
Yeah.
thought it was.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I might reread this. It's been quite a few years.
Right. Right. Yeah, so again, in the comment sections, let us know what you think about the book. If you read it, what did you think about The Love You Make? Let us know what you think about
Do
that
you
book as
think?
well. Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Do you think that history aside and the tainted, how it's tainted, and then the history of this book, do you feel that it's worthy to have purely for the transcripts of the interviews that were needed for this book?
Right, right,
I think they are. I think they are needed. I think they are needed to have on record. It may not be what the Beatles wanted to have all this stuff in print, but I think we don't judge them any less. We still love them all the same. Um,
right.
People
Yeah,
are human,
absolutely.
so warts
Yeah.
and all. So I am glad we have it. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
and it's going to be interesting to read these perspectives from people, many people long gone. So we should be thankful.
It's right. Yeah. We should be, obviously, like we said, all these people are gone. The circle keeps shrinking year in and year out. Unfortunately, you know, let's read this stuff now while there's people still with us. And again, you can take it with a grain of salt. You can take it as gospel. You can do with it what you will.
And
But
if you
I think they're very important. I think that
they
they're
are,
very
and I tell
important.
you what, if we ever get access to the tapes
Yeah.
don't lie. Like if you're wondering if these interviews have been tainted or the transcripts
Right.
aren't real or they've been doctored with, if we ever get a chance to hear the tapes, you can,
Right.
we've got the tapes. You can listen to them.
Just don't put them in a blue box.
A big blue one.
Blue box.
Yeah, the love you make.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. So yeah.
oh,
Again, let us
I'm
know
sorry.
if
All you need is
anyways.
love. This is the love you
Yeah.
make,
All you need
dummy.
is yeah. All you need is love. There you go. That was episode 245. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Please don't forget, if you're new, please subscribe to the YouTube channel Two Legs a Paul McCartney podcast. And we really appreciate all the new subscribers, all the new members on the audio, on the audio formats. Thank you for checking us out wherever you check us out. Thank you for listening and/or watching. We really do appreciate, and we love the comments. We try to get we always read them. Sometimes we'll respond to them, but it's a truly a great honor to still be doing this with Andy, and still finding things to talk about. I mean, even after however long it's been, 8 years I think now that we've been you know doing this show, with David and now Andy, and I'm sure we've got more years to go, hopefully, and
We're not
you
going
know, I
anywhere.
yeah, I mean, I know two podcasts have called it quits. If you need a new home, well, we welcome you with open arms, and if you love Paul, we'd love to talk Paul with you guys, and get your comments, and we just welcome you. Um, and that's really it. So, Andy, you had just seen somebody for the second time, right?
I did. I saw Barry Manilow last week at Radio City Music
Right,
Hall. I went and checked it out there. Saw him with the
right,
MVP. What a great concert. Great showman. Different
right.
different kind of show. Last year it was more of he did a show with an orchestra and stuff.
Okay,
So this year it was more just a band, and he
okay.
played a little more deeper cuts, but it was still a great show. Iconic venue.
Excellent.
Um,
Excellent.
Great
Yeah.
singer. Great singer, and played all the biggies. A couple of big ones he didn't play, but it was great. It was great show. Um,
Nice.
yeah, and next month there'll be May and June will be another concert heavy month at the end of the month. So May
Right.
and June will be busy and fun months, and I'll have some reviews of those concerts on my channel, Andy's Music Vault, the other leg.
Excellent. I'm going to look into Neil Young will be here in next month in May, so I'm looking
Oh, you got to go
to
to
get
that.
tickets. Oh yeah, I mean I've seen them before, but that was in the '90s, so I would love to see Neil again, and so I'll definitely be looking into that. Also looking into getting the tickets for ELO because he didn't perform in Phoenix those last two tours
Is
over
that
the
in
last 10
September
years.
as also or October?
I think September, October. I thought October, yeah. So I there's some decent price tickets still available for Joe Louis Arena. I think that's where no, Little Caesars. I'm sorry, Little
Okay.
Caesars Arena. That's what it's called. So
You'll
but
enjoy that.
yeah. Oh, I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it one
You'll
bit.
enjoy the ELO show.
Yeah. So email us at twolegspodcast@gmail.com. Again, leave comments in the comment section. And thank you, everyone. Andy, my friend, always great hanging out with you, talking McCartney, whether it's solo, which we mainly do. Sometimes we like to talk Beatle Paul as well. But this was another fun conversation. And we'll be back maybe next week or in 2 weeks. We'll see. We're going to map out May's show here right after we sign off here. You maybe expect Luca, maybe expect Coles and Sinclair.
Yep.
Expect more fun shows with great people, and we will see you next time. So as always, have a great day and a beautiful night. Take care.
You've been listening to Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast, hosted by Tom Hunyadi and Andy Nichols, with musical contributions